The more you try to remember to forget what it is that you don't know and don't understand about what isn't important, about the problems that you forgot about, the more you want. The purpose of a confusion language pattern is specifically to interrupt the trail of thoughts of the person listening and catch their attention, their awareness, their consciousness at the moment. It is also to create an open space into their mind as they listen whenever you want to insert some embedded command or some suggestion that you want to go through their conscious barriers, using a confusing pattern just before enumerating a very important suggestion about their life or something you would like them to agree upon is one of the cleverest ways to use conversational hypnosis. Basically, a confusion pattern is presupposing, or it is aimed at making the person think that you know things about themselves or things about them they don't know about themselves, or they don't know as well as you, considering the thing you just said. And overall, it can also help creating, I think, better connections, at least to some of them, can help creating better connections with people, because some of those patterns, as you're going to see, help to get deeper on the relationship, or at least on the conversation. You open a space to make them share deeper things about themselves. Before getting onto those 15 patterns, some principles to help you understand how they work and help you formulate, create your own, because the point is not to copy exactly what I say here, it is to invent your own patterns based on the way you naturally talk and speak with people around you all day long. The first big principle is the double negation. You are going to see many times in those patterns a double negation, like it is not in my best interest to not do that. Not. Double negation, or creating an overwhelm for the conscious mind of the listener, usually because, you know, we have a chunk of memory, a chunk of working memory that is limited to 7 information or stuff like that. So in a whole conversation, having one simple sentence filled with many negations, especially if they are creating an illogical meaning to the sentence, are creating an overwhelm for the conscious mind of the person, and they start dropping the resistance or the defense mechanisms or all the thing they would like to argue about. It makes them drop that level of resistance. Another principle is time frames. When you play with time frames, like it will be not yet, or it has already been something that did not happen in the future, those things are creating confusion, also playing on time frames, and you're going to see many examples of that too. Any sort of sentence that create an illogical meaning, or the meaning of the sentence is not logical. Also sentences loaded with nominalizations, so phrases like the emptiness of the embodiment of the paralysis that holds the conceptualization of memorization. This has literally no meaning, but filled with nominalizations like emptiness, embodiment, paralysis, conceptualization, memorization. When you just fill your sentences with words like that, same thing, it is confusing for the conscious mind of the person who was trying to prove you wrong or hold resistance in whatever way they're trying to hold it. It is helping them to lower the level of resistance. But the last thing before getting onto all of the patterns one by one, don't make your sentences too long either. I know it is a tempting thing to show how clever you can be with your hypnotic phrases when you start learning about NLP language patterns. One really temptation is to make your sentences as complicated, as filled with as many hypnotic words as possible. Stay simple, okay? You don't need to make it too long. If you make them too long, the most likely answer is the client or the subject or the person you talk to is going to feel like you are trying to make fun of them. And that is not the point, but like making fun of them in a mean way. That is really not the point. The point is to create an opening in their mind, to make them more focused and more attentive to what we say. It is not to make fun of them, okay? So here we go, pattern number 1. Have you ever considered the possibility your answers are telling what you're not aware of? That is framed as a question here, and the idea is to, again, presuppose you can read or know things they don't know about themselves. Most likely the person won't even have an answer. In many cases, at least, the person won't even have a direct answer, and they may tell you the most likely answer. Reply is, what do you mean? That is the point, because when they ask what do you mean, it means their mind is open now. Whereas when they are just lecturing you on why you're wrong and why they are smaller than you, there is no really any common ground to infuse your suggestions, your embedded commands, or the way you want to change their state of mind. Whereas if they are in a state of I don't get it, what do you mean? That means their mind now is open and you can use all the embedded commands or ask the real uncomfortable question you really wanted to ask from the beginning. But if you say that first, that phrase, have you considered the possibility your answers are telling what you're not aware of, they will be much more open to answer it than if you had been asking the next more uncomfortable question right away, right off the bat. Pattern number 2, are you aware of what you have already forgotten? So we are playing here with time frames with already forgotten, because what you are aware of, it is in the present tense, so something you are aware of right now. But when I say already forgotten, it is shifting the time frame into the future or something related to the past, because you have already forgotten about it. It is creating a confusion in the mind of the person because it is not clear. Are we in the present tense or are we somewhere in the future? Or do we talk about something I have done in the past? It is not clear at all in this sentence, and that is the point. The less clear it is, the easier it is to confuse the mind, the conscious mind, and the conscious limitations of the person listening to you. Pattern number 3, why don't you always agree with what you usually know to be true? This one again is filled with too many presuppositions to have a clear meaning right away, unless the person maybe has been used to listening to you speaking like that for like 15 minutes, and now they know how you work and where you want to get their mind to. In that case, maybe they will be able to answer it right away. But in most cases, it is too complicated. There are too many information in that sentence to just provide an easy reply right away. Because when you say, why don't you always agree? So first of all, you're presupposing they don't always agree, which you have no evidence for, but it is a presupposition, so they would have to question that in order to get clarification about what you meant. However, the sentence does not end here. The sentence goes on with, why don't you always agree with what you usually know to be true? With what you usually know to be true. What specifically? Like, if we don't clearly specify in the sentence what we are talking about, the person will be forced unconsciously to fill up the gaps in your sentence with information that is lying in their head. The easiest information at their disposal that they can use to understand cognitively the meaning of the sentence. But when there are so many hidden gaps, so many blanks in the sentence, why don't you always agree? About what? Not clarified, with what you usually know to be true. What you usually know about what? In which way do I know? All those things are not clearly explained and detailed, broken down in the question as I have outlined it. Therefore, the mind of the person will require some more detailed information, and they will be in a state of openness of why? They will try to gather information, and that is where you get them more hooked to what you say. Pattern number 4. The more you try to hide what is not there, the more sense it won't make. Using here the double negation, the more you try to hide what is not there, the more sense it won't make. Two negations in the same sentence. Again, it is overwhelming for the mind because it is creating some illogical meaning to that sentence. And the more you try to hide, what specifically? What is not there? But what specifically is not there? All those things are not clear, and quite often if you're in a session, the person will start to dive into their real problem when you ask questions that are as confusing and as general and vague as this one, because they came for a purpose, they came for a reason, and the reason they came for is under the shadow of all the things they have trouble talking about. So phrases like that help them to dive into the deeper part of themselves and fish for the real information they are trying to talk about because they came here for a therapy session, but they have trouble to really get it out. Phrases like the more you try to hide what is not there, the more sense it won't make. You help them actually reconnecting with the maybe parts in conflict that they have inside of themselves. You help them fish for the real thing they would like to mention that they have trouble mentioning because it is uncomfortable, or a part of them does not want to change. And pretty often in therapy sessions, the client is here because a part of them does not want to change. You may call that their ego, or no matter how you want to call it, or their past self, whatever. Just a part of them, something in them does not want to change. So you are helping them to get to the core of why a part of them does not want to change. And if that part was not there, what would be the simplest answer? The simplest reply to what do you want? And why are you not there already? Pattern number 5, how do you know when something is not true? This one is simple. It is something you may use in the beginning of a conversation because it does not require too much attention or focus it is something that can go by even without massive resistance. How do you know when something is not true? It is just something to create I would say more rapport with the person in front of you, because technically this one could be answered more easily. It is not too complicated either for the conscious mind to just drop any kind of attempt to understand. It is still something that can be replied, but it is something again that will create some deeper connection during the conversation at hand, because you are fishing now for deeper information than just the basic how do you feel, how is it going, good, not good, okay, so bad, okay, cool, fine. Here we are diving deeper into the mind of the person. And in case you didn't know about that, whenever we ask deep questions like that, the person goes into a trance just to find out the information that they are not used to talk about, to share with people around them. They need to get into some sort of light trance state just to figure out what the answer is. Pattern number 6, do you really believe in what you thought you knew? Playing on time frames again. What you thought you knew. What you thought you knew about what? What did I thought I knew in the beginning from the past? And do you really believe? So we are playing on time frames, and we are playing on awareness verbs. Awareness verbs are verbs that are making the bridge between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind easier. Awareness verbs like to believe, to think, to thought you knew, to think, to know, to believe. All of those things, all of those verbs are helping to shorten the gap, I would say, shorten the gap between the conscious mind, the limited mind, the ego, and the real unconscious mind, the deeper part of the client or the subject you have in front of you. You are shortening that gap by using a lot of verbs like that. To know, to be aware, to be conscious of, to realize, to imagine, to remember. When you use all those verbs, you are helping them to fish for deeper information and get back with much more clarity for the conversation at hand and the problem you are discussing during the session or during the conversation. Number 7, why don't you ask for what you think shouldn't be said? It is here an embedded question. Why don't you ask for what you think shouldn't be said? Why don't you ask is already a question by itself, but it is not ending here. Again, it is more complex, and the complexity creates the confusion. So why don't you ask? It should be ended here in a normal conversation, but we don't end there. We end with, why don't you ask for what you think shouldn't be said? And what you think shouldn't be said is a massive open space again. What you think shouldn't be said. Lots of things maybe shouldn't be said according to you, according to your model of the world. But when you ask questions like that during a conversation, specifically if you ask for it, especially at the moment the person has been evasive or trying to shift the topic of conversation, bring your attention on something else, whereas you perfectly know this is not the topic you should be talking about. The topic is here, specifically when you have a client and they are trying to hide something they don't want to talk about, but they still came here for a reason. So questions like that, why don't you ask for what you think shouldn't be said? And also what you think shouldn't be said. It could be something that shouldn't be said by people in general. So it is helping the client to distance themselves from the problem, because you're not clearly saying what you should not say. You say what shouldn't be said. Shouldn't be said can also imply other people, not just you. That way you are removing the pressure of holding responsibility, taking responsibility for what they don't want to talk about, which might be very uncomfortable. But if you say, what people don't want to talk about in general. Why do you think right now, just we post a video, why do you think people should not talk about? People. But when I say people, obviously we are going to connect with things you don't want to talk about, because your mind needs to fill up the gap of people. If I don't specifically say which person, then people could mean anybody. And how does your mind fill up that gap of figuring out what does he mean when he say anybody, everybody, people? Your mind is going to close that gap by answering with answers that come from you, from your life, from what you have seen. So when I ask something like that, what people should not say, you're automatically, it's not even a choice, you're automatically going to fill up that gap with what happens in your life. Number 8, is your question really not the one you did not want to ask? So again, a double negation with really not the one you did not want to ask. Double negations, as usual, are creating an overwhelm. It is too complicated to understand. And is your question really not the one you didn't want to ask? You are indirectly causing the person's mind to go meta, to go in a meta position, because is your question, first of all, you are asking a question about their question. So if you hadn't figured it out already, it is basically something to use just after they asked something. They might have been asking you, what do you think I should do with my life? Pretty general, but you get the point. They ask you, what do you think I should do with my life? And you reply with, is your question really not the one you didn't want to ask? It is helping them to basically find the answer by themselves. Because when somebody is asking you something like that, even in general, in life in general, when somebody is asking you for a suggestion like that, whereas it is about their life, basically they already have the answer, but they maybe are too shy or don't feel like they deserve to really dive into the thing they would like to do. Or maybe they feel paralyzed by fear and they are waiting for a more authoritative personality or a more authoritative figure that you automatically are. If you're the therapist or the coach, you automatically are an authoritative figure in the conversation at hand. So some people who ask questions like that about them may just be trying to give a validation for, yes, it is okay, you can do that. But instead of brutally confronting them with, why do you ask me? You may ask something like that. Is your question really not the one you didn't want to ask? And naturally, they will be confused, and then you will help them to figure out the answer by themselves. Number 9, how do you do to stop thinking when you have no thoughts? This one is something to use with people who talk too much, who keep talking and talking, and whenever you ask a simple question, they feel entitled to give you an hour-long details, whereas you just asked, how are you going today? And they start to tell you everything that happened minute by minute from the last week. In that case, how do you do to stop thinking when you have no thoughts? Basically, it could also almost be an embedded command where with the when you have no thoughts. It is almost an embedded command here to help them shutting down the monkey mind and refocus on the present moment. As usual, one of the essential pillars of conversational hypnosis is to get people focused on the moment and not in their mind worrying or just intellectualizing or thinking about too many things. We get back here, laser target focused on the moment at hand. Number 10, do you think you knew you were thinking out loud? It is a massive presupposition here that you can read things from them you can read more things from them than they wish they would share openly. So do you think you knew you were thinking out loud? Don't say that in a funny way, really say that in a serious way. Like, do you really think you knew you were thinking out loud? First of all, think you knew is a double awareness verb. So again, creating confusion. It is difficult to process so many awareness verbs for the conscious mind of the person. Do you think you knew? Time frames. Think is in the present tense. Knew is in the past tense. Even more confusion. Do you think you knew you were thinking? Were thinking, so we get back from past to present tense. Were thinking out loud. You are presupposing in that sentence that you can read their body language or their voice tonality, or you can see things they are trying to hide at that particular moment, but you are presupposing it in a skilled way, in a skillful way, without saying it directly. So you are implying to their unconscious mind that there is no place to hide. You can see them. You can see what they don't want to say. And from that space, people will basically bullshit you much less. If you already have some rapport and you say something like that, they will start to bullshit you much less, because now there is an implied suggestion that you can see and hear what they are trying to hide. So basically they will start more, they will be likely to start being more authentic and honest in the conversation. Number 11, the less you try, the more you will agree. This one is pretty simple. It might be just some funny phrase to insert in the conversation at some point. It can be used to loosen up the person a little bit when they are very tense and very they want to prove something, or they want to explain everything in big details. To loosen them up a little bit, you might say something like that. The less you try, the more you'll agree. Illogical, because normally the clear grammatical sentence should be something like the more you try, the more you'll agree, or something that makes more sense, at least on the basic level. But the less you try, the more you will agree. First of all, agree about what? This is not even clear here. You may connect that with something, again, they are resisting, something they have some resistance about. It makes me think about, the classical reframe of the things you resist will persist, but this one is pretty clear. Here it is kind of the same thing, but with a confusion pattern. The less you try, the more you will agree. It is helping, again, to get a more authentic connection during the conversation, getting into the real things we want to say during that conversation, and not just the surface toxic positivity bullshit that people serve all day long with, hey, everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine. No, everything is not fine, but sometimes you can also enumerate things you don't like, or things that have been hurting you. Number 12, people don't say what the hidden part of themselves don't wish to know. Aha. So think about that for a minute. People don't say, as I said earlier, when you say people don't, naturally, if I don't specify who, people, but it could be anybody, it could be a president, or it could be your neighbor, there is really no clarification. People don't. Naturally, automatically, your mind is going to fill that gap, that blank. For who do we talk about? This is a blank in the sentence, grammatically and conscious and cognitively. It is a blank. The mind of the listener is going to fill the blank with personal information. That is the idea of a vague language, coming from Milton Erickson, at least the way we have codified it. People don't say what the hidden part of themselves don't wish to know. So don't wish to know. What do we talk about? Again, it is helping the person to fish for something really deep they would like to share, but they can't because of defense mechanisms, because they are not confident enough, because they don't have enough self-esteem, because they don't feel like they deserve the life they would like to live, all of that. People don't say what the hidden part of themselves don't wish to know. Hidden part of themselves is also something helpful to make people distance, help people create a box, which is, okay, the hidden part of you. It is not you, don't worry, it is not you. It is the hidden part of you. But by watching unconsciously the hidden part of you, you are putting there all the things that are maybe have been hurting you, or the things you don't want to admit about yourself. Therefore, it is creating conflicts pretty often. For example, in a marriage, it may create conflicts between the husband and the wife because some things are too uncomfortable to admit, either from the husband or from the wife, or both of them at the same time. And using that kind of language pattern, what does the hidden part of you wants to say? Or if there was a hidden part to you, what do you think would be lying in that hidden part of you, Johnny? Inserting the name helps to make the person connect with the things they would like to share, but they feel uncomfortable sharing. So people don't say what the hidden part of themselves don't wish to know. It is helping to be more authentic again. It is creating a confusion. The person might reply with something that they would like to be clarified, but the specific questions they are going to ask at that moment are going to be linked with their real problem. Because when you say something like that, you're touching unconsciously on the things that are really painful, or the things that are really that really matter in the conversation, basically. Number 13, what do people who don't think like you don't want to share openly? Share openly is an embedded command. It is helping the person to share information they haven't been able to share so far in the conversation. And we find, once again, the double negation. So don't think you don't want to share openly. A double negation always creates an overwhelm because it is difficult to grasp the meaning of a double negative sentence. In any kind of language, grammar, it is always more difficult to grasp the meaning of that. Number 14, if there was a way to stop defending the position you don't hold, how would you do it then? It is helping the person lower the resistance they have. You might use that whenever people are highly resistant and you can see they would like to let go. They sincerely would like to let go and to be more open. Maybe they would like to be more open with their wife, with their husband, in their relationships in general, or with when meeting new friends. Maybe they have social anxiety. They would like to go to people, but they can't. So if there was a way to stop defending, it is also a command, stop defending, which is intuitively going to be grasped by the unconscious mind as, okay, the part of me that is being resistant right now, is that part that my ego, whatever, was being shut down, what would I naturally want to do? If I did not have resistance, if I was not self-sabotaging myself, what would I naturally want to do? And that phrase is helping with that. It is creating enough confusion due to its complexity. It is creating enough confusion for the person to drop maybe the resistance that is around the thing they think they don't deserve or the thing they wish they could do, but they don't think they are capable of doing it. You're helping them to reconnect with that. And finally, number 15, are you aware of what will happen after you have stopped to believe what you don't believe yet? Massive time frame, fucked up confusion here. So aware of, awareness verb, again, creating something. The person needs to fill the gap for what, aware of what specifically. Are you aware of what will happen? So time frame, will happen after. For now, we are in the future. So far, the conscious mind can follow the trail of the sentence. You have stopped. You have stopped. So it is going into past tense right now. Double time frame in a sentence. Very difficult to follow for the conscious mind. To believe what you don't believe yet. So actually we talk about the future. But wait a minute. Do we talk about the past or about the future? All this confusion is helping the mind, the ego, to lower the resistance, to finally be authentic with the things they want to talk about. Are you aware of what will happen after you have stopped to believe what you don't believe yet? And believe is such a deep awareness verb that, again, they will use that verb unconsciously to think. They will intuitively think about something that really matters, something they would like to talk about, or something they would like to change about themselves that they have trouble changing on their own, which is why maybe they are asking you about it, or which could be why they are having a confrontation with you, or they are like arguing with you. But in the end, they would like to let go and change. At least some part of them would like to be more authentic and more chill in the conversation, be more normal, if there is such a thing as being normal, a more normal version of themselves in the conversation, but they can't because they have been hurt, because they're not confident enough, whatever, somebody hurt them, whatever happened. But those phrases really help to create a more meaningful conversation and a more meaningful exchange with the people all around you. If you want to learn more about all those language patterns and how to use them, there is a document in the description called the 7 Steps to Master Sleight of Mouth, which will use a bit of confusion, but also many other principles in NLP and linguistics to create a more persuasive way of talking, to help you being more persuasive and more influential when you discuss any kind of topic with people around you.